Hi there, come on in. If you watch television for an escape, oh, do we have the show for you. If you'll remember last fall, we had a story from Tom Walter, who used his VHS camera to record a black bear he encountered on a fishing trip. This bear had him almost cornered, backed him into the water, a harrowing experience. Tom has it all recorded, and many of you asked us to run that show again so you could record it on your VCRs. It's right here tonight, along with a great recipe and a lot more, so you stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, time for the Great Escape here on Michigan Outdoors.
Area across from here is where the moose was spotted earlier.
This home video was taken by Tom Walter from Waterford, Michigan, who was on a spring fishing trip in Canada. Tom was alone, hoping to get some video of a moose that was seen earlier that day. Before he could sneak up on the moose, a black bear interrupted the stillness of the Ontario wilderness, giving Tom the scare of his life.
Swampy. Go on! Go on, bear! Go on, bear! You get away, bear! Go on, bear! Get out of here! Get out of here, bear! Get out of here, bear! Get out of here, bear! Get out of here! Get! No, bear, no! Go on! Hey! You get out of here! Get out of here! Get the tree! Get the tree! Get out of here, bear! Get out of here, you bear! Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out of here, bear! Get out of here! No! You go!
The bear had Tom backed into a lake, and every time Tom thought the situation was calming down, the bear made another rush.
Get out of here! You get out of here! No! No! Get! I'm gonna drown. No! Get out of here, bear!
A few seconds after this, the bear retreated and Tom turned the video camera off, but his evening of horror wasn't over. Tom smiles about it now as he recounts the experience and tells us the rest of the story.
Well, yeah, I was trying to film a beaver that I'd seen earlier. I was trying to film a moose, but a beaver was out there splashing around. When I heard the noise, I thought it might be a beaver coming down the hill. So I flicked on my camera and turned around and there he was. He's about 20 yards away from me, and he didn't run. He came right at me.
Did you start off figuring you'll get tape of this bear? You get videotape of it?
Well, yeah, when I first saw him, I thought, you know, wow, this is cool. I'm going to get to film with this bear, and as soon as he sees me, he's going to run. And then when he started coming at me, I just started backing up and using the camcorder as kind of a weapon, per se.
Were you aware as things progressed that the camera was on?
Yeah, I knew it was on. I knew it was on because I remember flicking it on. And like I said, I was using it as a weapon. I also had a little 3-inch pocket knife and a sheath, which I managed to get out. So if you can picture me standing there with a little knife and a little camcorder backing away the whole time.
But you weren't really concerned after maybe a minute or so. You weren't too concerned about whether the picture was centered and in focus.
No, I wasn't. I was not concentrating on filming at all. I was very concerned after the first 10 seconds.
Oh, 10 seconds.
Yeah, because he came right at me.
How? I mean, we see on the tape, and it looks like it might be kind of playful or.
Yeah, initially I didn't know what to expect. I just wanted to get out of there. I just wanted to get back to where my brother had dropped me off in the boat, and that's all I could think about. Although I did know I was filming.
Okay, now it came at you the first time, and then what would it do? Would it back away or?
Well, if it got to like between me and you in that distance, I would really scream. I would really scream real loud, and he would always stop when I'd do that. And then I'd try to back up a little bit more, and then he'd keep coming, and then I'd scream again. And finally, he pushed me into the water. It's the only place I had to go. And he came into the water for a little while, but then he just kind of wandered off.
What were you wearing?
I had on like camo overalls and a pair of Sorel boots.
So once the water got into that.
They were very heavy. There's a whole other episode that's not on film.
Mm-hmm. Now you're talking about after you cut the camcorder off.
Yeah, see what happened is he left, and all I wanted to do was get back to where my brother dropped me off. So I got out of the water, turned the camera off, and started making my way back there, and I heard this noise again, turned around, and there he was like 30 yards away, this time running full speed at me.
Oh no.
And there was a blown down tree right beside me, and I was trying to step over it, but my coveralls weighed too much, my boots weighed too much, and I kept trying to get over it. He kept closing the distance on me. Finally, I had to go down on all fours to go underneath it, and when I went down on the ground, he really came hard. He came real hard. So I rolled underneath the tree, and I stood up, and he was about this close, and I really screamed real loud. And he stopped, he pushed me back into the water some more, and he made a lunge at me in the water. None of this is on film, so I don't know if you believe me or not.
Where was the camcorder at the time? Did you have it in your hand?
I still had it in my hand, but I had turned it off when I got out of the water originally.
Huh.
And then this time when he wandered off, I stayed in the water about 5 minutes to make sure he was gone. Then I got out and worked my way back.
Well, maybe when you were heading back to your brother, maybe that's where the cubs might have been, more in that area.
It could have been. I don't know. Like I said, I never saw any cubs or anything else.
So at the close range, was the bear growling or anything?
What I remember the most is his eyes. He had he'd kind of look at you sideways, and he had that look in his face like, I'm going to get you, But he never growled, and he never saw his fur stick up or anything like that.
Never saw his teeth?
Never saw his teeth.
Could you smell it?
No.
You don't remember?
Don't remember smelling
Oh,
him.
because bears oftentimes stink.
I was probably smelling something else.
I guess. Well, speaking of how scared you were, I mean, you must have had goosebumps or your heart pounding, or how did that feel?
Well, I remember getting back to where my brother dropped me off. He was out fishing. He was supposed to meet me back in an hour. And I got back to where he had dropped me off, and I still had 10 minutes to go before he was supposed to be there. And I was real nervous because I was expecting this bear to come back any time. What I remember the most is how dry my throat was from screaming. I just was so dry. And my brother likes to tell a story when he came around the corner to pick me up that I was just a babbling idiot and shaking, and he couldn't understand what I was saying. And they would have never believed me, but I have it on film.
Now, when we look at that tape, it's kind of humorous the way you call the bear, bear. Like, go away, bear.
Well, I didn't know what else to say.
What else to call him? Did swearing at him help? Did that seem to get his attention anymore?
Not really.
I would have expected, in fact, all of us who watched the tape would have thought that there would be more dramatic off-color language. I mean, you were quite mannerly with this bear, actually.
I don't know. I didn't have time to think of any good dialogue.
What went through your head about the bear possibly attacking you, what you would do if it got any closer? Did you have any plans?
Yeah, I did, as a matter of fact. Somebody was asking me that. Well, somebody said, why were you filming? Why didn't you put the camera down and run? And I knew you're not supposed to run. You read that in all the magazines. If I would have ran, first of all, there's no place to run. There was so many blowdowns, and you couldn't run. Mm-hmm. But if he were to attack me, I was thinking this. I actually was, that I was going to take the camcorder and shove it in his mouth as he was going to bite me or something, and then maybe that'd give me a few more seconds.
What about your knife, your 3-inch pocket knife?
I almost stabbed him once when I was standing over that blowdown when he was about, like I say, he was a foot or 2 feet away. I almost stabbed him.
Where? Where would you have stabbed him?
In the head. His head was right there. But
that might have really teed him off.
I know. I'm glad I didn't do that.
So how does it feel right now sitting next to Franklin Soltz's mounted bear here?
Well, as long as he's not moving.
Does it make you a little nervous?
No, not anymore. I used to think about it, and when I'd go to bed, like 2 weeks later, I always thought it'd make a much better story if he had taken a swipe at me, and maybe I had to get 20 stitches or something. But
you probably wouldn't have wanted that. Now, of course, the question is, are you going back there to fish again this year?
Actually, we're not going back to this place because the lake didn't produce as many fish as we'd like, but we go every year. I just probably won't go wandering off in the woods by myself anymore.
So you're going to curtail that? Anything else you're going to do different?
No, I'd like to take a gun with me, I guess, but I don't think they'll let you do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it turned out okay. Mm-hmm. You're alive and well. Mm-hmm. And what a story.
Thank you.
Yeah. Isn't that one terrific experience? I'm glad that Tom Walter recorded that so we could share in that. I hope you enjoyed it. But, a lot of you have written in asking me, that's fine to see a bear attack, but what should a person do? Well, right here we have a grizzly bear claw. This will be up in our education center and museum when we get this built. It was up in Houghton Lake. This is grizzly bear claw, can tear you apart. Here's the rule of thumb. If a grizzly bear is chasing you, play dead. If a black bear is chasing you, fight him off, exactly the way Tom Walter did. Because grizzly bears generally do not eat their quarry right away. Black bears will tend to. I learned that in this book from Stephen Herrero called Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidance. A fascinating book because we've had so many people ask us about bear attacks. We have this in the Outdoor Digest magazine. If you want to order a copy, it's found in the magazine. Bear attacks, they're really something. If you want something a little milder, I suggest you go fishing because you might end up with a trophy for our trophy book. Hefting a 41-inch northern pike is Jim Barclay from Hazlitt. He caught it from Lake Mitchell near Cadillac on 6-pound test line without a leader. Taxidermist Keith Lutz from Saginaw was probably fishing Sturgeon Bay for walleye when he caught this 32-inch burbot, also called a lawyer or eel pout. Here's an April Great Lakes brown trout from Lake Michigan off Leelanau County, caught trolling with a Rapala from Dick Stubbs from East Lansing, 33 inches long. It weighed nearly 21 pounds. Here's a January inland brown trout, big red and black spots taken through the ice from Lake Leelanau. Wyman Frisk from Traverse City caught this 30-incher. And with an 11 1/8 inch bluegill is Larry Whetton from Edwardsburg. This came out of Houghton Lake on a waxworm a week before Tip-Up Town last year. And here's a deer story from the good old days way back in 1989.
Yeah, I took 2 pretty nice bucks last year, and I spent 97 hours in the woods this year trying to top that. My 2 last year were 121 and 117 they scored. Being the 13th buck with a bow, I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but I went out on November 9th, which is going to be my last day out, and I'm consider myself a fairly good shot, and I did bow hunter's nightmare. I emptied all 4 of my good arrows on 4 different bucks. I got my composure together, wiped my eyes, went down there, pulled them out of the ground, got back in my blind, and about an hour later, this one come through, and I had figured out that my knock had slipped, and I took this one.
You did regain your composure on that. $4 for one evening. 1989 was a deer season that Terry Sheets from Milan will long remember. A lot of brow tines made his buck a 12-pointer, and Terry's our Michigan Outdoors Big Buck Hunter of the Week. In the past few weeks, I've brought up some rather disturbing facts for sportsmen about our Department of Natural Resources, particularly the Wildlife Division, questioning the value we're receiving for the $22 million we spend in hunting license fees and $20 million in fishing license fees. $42 million altogether. Well, what prompted this investigation was the numerous complaints I was hearing about deer season 1990. Hunters who weren't seeing deer and who seriously questioned the numbers of deer the DNR said were in our woodlands. I heard numerous reports of crop damage and block permits being handed out by DNR biologists who evidently are so overworked that they didn't have time to check if there were crop damage problems or even if the landowners farmed their land. Also, sportsmen weren't believing the numbers of deer the DNR said were taken by hunters. Well, in some states like Missouri, it's mandatory that hunters take their deer to a check station within 24 hours of bagging that deer. In other states like Wisconsin, I've heard, part of your deer must be showing where it's visible on your car or truck so that those deer can be counted by biologists, and then when they're tagged, you can have them concealed. In Michigan, on the heels, right within a week or so of the end of 1990 deer season, it was announced by the DNR that 310,000 deer were taken by hunters. How in the world did they come up with that number so soon? Well, they say it's due to the count of deer that come over the Mackinac Bridge that are seen, observed visually, and also by the number of deer that are reported by hunters voluntarily to a handful of check stations. This really doesn't seem like an accurate census technique, and what really disturbs me, the DNR wildlife chief, Carl Hosford, defends it.
We've been using that technique for over 30 years. It's pretty refined. It's pretty accurate. We probably come in within 5%.
The bridge count and voluntary check station information accurate within 5%? Holy cow, that would revolutionize census taking in this country. Gallup polls have an acceptable 5% margin of error. There's no way that a count like that can possibly be that accurate. Why would the DNR go ahead with this expensive and elaborate postcard survey? That's probably accurate within 5% by itself. These things just don't make any sense. But where is the problem? Why do people seem to be covering for the DNR's lack of staff to get around to do the job right? Well, let's take a look at the DNR organization chart. At the top of the heap is the governor. Underneath is the Natural Resources Commission he appoints, which is supposed to set the priorities and policies for the DNR. On this chart, a big chunk of it is administration. Looks a little top-heavy with this expense. Here are our resources, including the law enforcement and fish and wildlife divisions, and over here is the environment. Actually, the environment takes the lion's share of DNR money, it chews up most of the staff time, and it often hogs the entire monthly DNR Commission agenda. Here's the agenda for the January 1991 meeting of the Natural Resources Commission. Staff report starts off in the morning, well, let's see, on forestry, toxicity, policy, budget, Office of the Great Lakes. None of the Fish or Wildlife chiefs are here. New business, well, concession fees, administrative rules, solid waste alternatives, real estate matters, a whole list of them, exchanges, sales, mineral rights, non-metallic rights, oil and gas leases, fee increases. That's it. That's the entire agenda. You know, in the good old days before the environment was added to the DNR, fish and game management took up the entire commission agenda. We looked at problems every month, solved problems. I mean, that's what hunters and fishermen, I think, deserve with our $42 million in license fees. But you want to know where the problem really lies? Well, look at agenda page 3, item number 9. The DNR Commission handles a solid waste alternative request for $20 million for prior appropriation. $20 million far exceeds the budget of the fisheries or the wildlife divisions. Financially, we're a drop in the bucket to this big DNR. If we're going to be heard and be on an agenda, we have to have our commission back again. Fish and Game Commission with a Fish and Game Department. If you feel the same way and want to be represented with our $42 million and be on an agenda each month, make sure your state senator, your state representative knows. Carbon copy a letter, too, to Governor Engler. He's going to be mulling this over in the next few months.
Deborah Greenhouse sent us a recipe for bluegills AuGratin. Deborah and Tom usually send us a recipe for squirrels, so I was quite surprised to see a fish recipe come across.
You're going to be quite surprised to see these bluegill. These,
They are
honestly,
huge.
are bluegill fillets. We caught those with Gary Botek on that farm pond this past
Yes.
summer. Huge
They
bluegills.
most certainly are. And you're going to saute some onions and mushrooms. And you could use the canned here, but we're going to go ahead and use fresh because everything in the recipe calls for fresh. And I think it just tastes
Fresher
better, right?
frozen carrots, peas,
And you cook
green
it-
beans, artichoke.
Yes, you cook everything individually and then go ahead and mix it up because everything takes a little bit different amount of time.
That looks like it would be a good side dish right there.
Yeah, it would be.
And they're those huge, huge bluegill fillets.
You know, layer some of the fillets on top of the vegetables. And then she says to leave, or to pack them in tightly, not to leave any space in between. And I can see why, because everything would fall between. And you just want it to actually taste the fish.
You know, this is interesting because a lot of people say that the big fish like this don't taste as good as the small ones. And I
Yeah.
tend, from when I filleted those out, to agree. They
I
don't
do
look
too.
like they're going to taste as
Right.
good as the small ones.
Then you can make a crumb topping of Parmesan cheese and cracker crumbs, and then put a little bit of, just drizzle a little bit of melted butter over the top to make it brown. Very, very easy.
Well, it looks like it looks like this recipe could actually, you could put quite a few different kinds of meats in it.
Or vegetables even, and then just gonna cook it in the oven just to let it brown.
Well, I'm an artichoke fan myself. Sometime we're going to have to show folks how I filleted those giant bluegills, but right now let's get on to Bob Garner and pose the obvious question. Does he have more fun eating them or catching them?
Hey, both ends of that deal are a no-lose proposition. But you know, this recipe, and these are big bluegills, and they are not as tasty as the just sort of fryers that you usually get. This recipe is delicious, but I'm sort of disappointed in the fact that bluegill doesn't taste like bluegill. It just tastes like just plain good fish. People should try this recipe, but I would really recommend that they try it with some other type of fish.
Walleye.
Yeah,
or
but you
great
see,
perch.
you're going to tee off a lot of people who love walleye. But it reminds me of walleye. These big
Yeah, it
bluegill do.
does. Yep.
And look at the little collection of bones I have. They come off of the ribs. They usually disintegrate and dissolve, but not in bluegills this size.
Yeah.
These are like spikes. But otherwise, what do you think about that artichoke, Bob?
Hey, artichokes are fine in my book anytime. And bluegill fishing, for big bluegills like this, and even eating them in this recipe, that's fine in my book too.
You don't need 1 pound bluegills for this casserole. A variety of fish would work fine. Or try pheasant or rabbit or chicken. You'd be surprised how versatile a recipe like this is. Well, the lakes are frozen. We have snow on the ground. Get outdoors this weekend. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
There's a nice one. There's a nice one. Whoa, yeah. All right.
Next week on Michigan Outdoors, we'll bring you our first weekend of Tip Up Town, USA, and some extraordinary fishing action. Incredible battle with a 45-pound Alaskan king salmon. Just like the good old days in Michigan when our salmon program was young, our recipe is Afterglow chili made with venison burger. All this and more next week, right here on Public TV.
Okay, Steve, I think I can... Easy. Here we go.